Welcome to the Zero Trust Journey podcast, created by cybersecurity practitioners for those walking the same path. We share real stories, hard lessons, and hard-won victories from the field, so you can sidestep the pitfalls and deliver the wins. Grab your coffee, tune out the buzzwords, and let's get into the real story right here on the Zero Trust Journey podcast.
Welcome everyone to Zero Trust Journey podcast. My name is Victor Monga. I am the producer and co-host for this podcast. Today we have Martin Rivera, CEO of Enstall Technologies, helping enterprises build secure and modern networks. And we have Ken Yao. Welcome back, Ken.
Thank
CEO
you.
of Cybers, a marketplace that helps SMBs find the right cybersecurity solutions without vendor bias. Both of you, welcome. Today's conversation is a lot around SMB, but anything you want to add to your background, anything that I missed, maybe you want to add? Martin, we'll start with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Victor. Always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for having us here, and great to see Ken as well. So I'm a former network engineer by trade, so I actually do come from a very strong technical background.
Awesome.
That led me into the sales engineer role, and now, leading Enstall.
And Ken?
Yeah, no, it's great to be back again, Victor, and looking forward to the exciting conversation together, Martin. My background's relatively simple. I spent most of my time in cybersecurity consulting, working with large enterprise customers, as well as some government space, as well as global customers as well at my previous firms. So really excited to have a wide-ranging discussion going from the enterprise all the way to small business needs.
Awesome. Well, you know what? Let's jump right into it, gentlemen. SBA reported SMBs make up 99.9% of U.S. businesses and employ nearly half the workforce. For this discussion today, we're talking SMBs, small, medium businesses in that 100 to 200 user range, often part of a supply chain or in e-commerce or similar segment. Why is this important or so important to secure this segment? Ken, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, in those segments that you specifically mentioned, I think the supply chain, the digital footprint, these represent very outsized risk to either their business or their partners' businesses. That said, there's really two fundamental reasons for SMBs to care about cybersecurity, right? They have so many priorities that they're juggling from a business perspective. So that's actually the number one reason is there's a business need. Business needs can come from risks or as well as compliance requirements coming from their supply chain or business growth, M&A, privacy considerations for their customer base. That's the number one reason. The second reason, that's kind of the more fun reason that we have a lot of conversations on, is it's risk and recent incidents. So it's either they had one or they're afraid of one or doing some sort of preventative measure to it. But there's really those two fundamental reasons to it. Again, the business needs or a fear of a recent incident.
Martin, you deal a lot with enterprises, but I'm sure they have a supply chain or they contract a lot of work to SMBs as well. And I'm sure in your industry or segment or region, you hear some SMBs problems as well. Why do you think that it's important for them to consider to secure that segment? Because it is a part of a bigger problem or solution, if you will, when it comes to SMBs, because they are supply chain helping the bigger machines to run.
I mean, I think, ultimately, they have a responsibility towards their clients and the people that they interact to make sure that their business processes are secure. And, you don't want to cause liability to anybody that you work with. I think that's the bottom line. I mean, from a business standpoint, that's a great way to go out of business as an SMB. If you get compromised and let's say you actually end up losing your biggest client or biggest clients, then you're going to be done, right? There's no coming back from that. So I think it's easier for the enterprises that have a lot of capital and a lot of, PR machines behind them to, the AT&Ts of the world to get breached and back. But if you're a smaller enterprise and you get breached and, that somehow gets your larger clients, that's probably the end of your business.
Let's double click on that one, Martin. As you said, enterprises have resources, enterprises have experts, if you will, when it comes to IT, security, risk, governance, compliance. Cyber Readiness Institute, they reported 60% of SMBs have no dedicated cybersecurity expert. And this is in my personal opinion and research as well. Many SMBs do not have a full-time CISO or let alone a security leader. Sometimes not even IT staff. So how does this lack of in-house expertise shape their cybersecurity buying decisions? So let's jump into that part where they are ready to buy technologies, but they have no in-house expertise who will guide them.
I'll go for it. So definitely, the human capital is the largest missing component, not just on the SMB, but we're actually seeing it a lot on the enterprise side as well, where most of our customers have CapEx budgets, but they don't have any more headcount. So they keep adding a lot of tools, but they don't have the people to manage the tools. And then at a smaller level on the SMB space, a lot of these SMB customers don't have the tools and definitely don't have the people, right? So it's a double-edged sword that
Sure.
which one you want to invest in buying the tool, but then you don't have a resource to actually manage that tool. I mean, I think that the industry is catching up to that. And I do see quite a few vendors that are starting to offer complete solutions for the SMB.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ken, you started Cybers on a fundamental principle, which is community and open source, or having that knowledge sharing with the community, so that when and how I'm ready to purchase, if I'm SMB, I'm an owner or a co-founder, I can rely upon not the traditional way of going to the vendors, but maybe a little bit more new approach, if you will. Do you want to highlight that approach and what that means when it comes to, if I don't have in-house IT or security, how does that new approach helps me or even factors in my consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate kind of the context provided for Cybers. I would start with by saying cybersecurity is just fundamentally tough, right? Like it in and of itself is a study on how to manage resources and priority. It's tied to a risk, tied to your business, and it should be an enabler of that business. So the premise of what I believe is the nuance to all this of making cybersecurity more accessible and simplifying things is we have to be able to meet customers where they are in their journey. So one of the data points, according to Canalys, is there are 28 steps in that purchasing journey where you have to kind of know what the right connections, the right conversations are to have, the right data points to help people move from the awareness of a problem to the activation of a problem.
Let me just ask you one question. That awareness part, if I have no in-house IT or security, how would I be aware of the problem?
Exactly, right? So I do actually think we do a very good job in cybersecurity or in the digital world today. People know there's a need for cybersecurity. How they do it, and that pain point is exactly the crux of this issue for SMBs. So the definition of SMBs I work with is the people that need cybersecurity, but who definitely don't have enough resources to do it well. So they have to find that balance of what is good enough or what is minimally viable security for them and be able to move things forward from there, along with, again, the 20 other priorities that they juggle. That said, I do think the trigger. So being able to meet them where they are, whether that's compliance, M&A, a new CISO, a recent incident, or even something like poor service that they've experienced. Those are all the type of triggers that are there that help us meet SMBs when they need cybersecurity, because they can't constantly think about cybersecurity. That's just not how an SMB business works. To your point, they don't have the dedicated person. But being aware of the risks and being informed about the resources available, I think, is the best way to prepare SMBs in this space.
Gotcha. Martin, you work with a lot of enterprises. What is their typical cybersecurity buying lifecycle or journey looks like? So for, as Ken mentioned, for founder or even a CEO of a small business, that might be different than the enterprises. So let's do the contrast. What is the enterprise cybersecurity solution purchase lifecycle looks like?
I'd say typically about, if they already have something in place, it typically takes about 6 months to explore new solutions. I mean, I think there's a good amount of tools that almost every large enterprise is running right now. And, but that landscape is always changing. So there's always new tools, better tools. What was good 3 years ago might not be good in the next few years. So that landscape is changing constantly. So I think like most of the time, customers start exploring different tools 6 months in advance. Now, if there's a gap in their security environment, that I would put it in two buckets. Either they've had a security incident, and if that's the case, the timeline is extremely fast. It could be a matter of days, if not weeks. But if they don't have an actual incident, I would say most of the security teams that we work with, even larger teams, I feel like they're all overworked. So it could take months before they actually purchase a security solution. And then that kind of goes back to the beginning. What I was saying is that in the mindset of a lot of these practitioners, it's like, oh my God, I have one more tool to deal with, one more tool to manage. So I do think that is the biggest challenge right now is the human capital,
For sure. For
yeah.
sure. Can you walk us through how an SMB typically approaches buying a cybersecurity solution? I think, again, they don't have in-house expertise, so they can either Google or ChatGPT or Gemini. But who's ultimately making the call? The founder, or maybe the finance person? Usually, I'm sure the budget is top of the mind, right? They have a number or they want to minimize that as much as possible. So what is their buying lifecycle looks like for SMBs typically?
Okay. I'll answer that in two parts, one around the decision maker and two around the process itself. So one being the decision maker, I do think we've matured enough where we can look at the numbers game as well as the industries and be able to analyze like what that decision maker profile looks like. So very simply, under 50 employees, it's the CEO's job. 50 to 100 employees, it's the CFO and CTO job. Above 100, then you get into some more risk ownership conversations between your business and IT. Again, CFO, CTO, but you may possibly start including cybersecurity advisors as you grow. And when you get into enterprise space, kind of what Martin described of all of these teams, the complex procurement, all of these folks are involved in that space. So that's number one of who is the decision maker and the profile behind that. And there's obviously nuance to that. Depends on the industry, depends on the company structure. Yes. But roughly we can profile that into its necessary buckets. Now, the decision-making process the evaluation steps, they look at cost, functionality, compatibility, user experience, and customer support. So those are the 5 biggest factors to it. What's interesting is cost is the biggest factor, but it's not the starting point. And this is true for SMBs all the way to the actual starting points. I'll break that down further of the starting point to buy versus starting point to replace. Those two are different as well. The starting point to buy are actually functionality and then user experience. So people buy things based off of the capabilities, based off of what it does for their program, as well as by how usable is it? Do they like it or not? Like, is it something that they can touch and see and work daily workflow? Now to replace, it comes down to compatibility and customer support. Compatibility being, hey, how well does this work in my environment with my other tools and how does it fit? And customer support being, if I have a really bad experience with the product and the people behind it, then I'm going to be looking to kind of knife them whenever I get a chance. All that to say, cost is the biggest factor because that's the language of measuring ROI. That's always the factor and the conversation, especially as you get into larger organizations, more structure around finance procurement. But there's really this breakdown of these strategic or technical starting points. Again, going back all the way to the beginning of why are we talking about cybersecurity? Well, where's the business need? Where's the driver? And to what Martin talked about of recent incidents, those are the things that push people into this conversation and trigger the decision makers to go into this process. And again, balancing between their different priorities and evaluating these different solutions.
And I feel like for SMBs, it's when it comes to evaluation of product or a solution, as you point user experience and they want to know, okay, how much it's going to cost me annually or how much it's going to cost me to maintain, manage it as well. But I think there's also a biggest piece of the puzzle here. When SMBs are trying to evaluate solutions, I think they don't even consider the big players because the big players are not too attracted to SMBs, or you guys tell me otherwise. Or in other words, the SMBs might not understand all the advanced features the big players have it in cybersecurity. So they are left with, let's call them mediocre, good enough solutions, and they make the best out of it. Is that a true assumption or is that a true conversation? Or do you think it's not where SMBs also consider big players and try to make the use of it?
I can jump in. I think that's a good way to say it. I would put the more positive spin on it of calling it, the minimal viable security. Right. And I think it's a bet, right? Like taking a bet of your business and all small businesses do every day as a small business owner, you make bets, right? Like, okay, will this turn out this way? Will this turn out this way? How do I spend my time? How do my team invest in these things? It's all little bets along the way. I think a good way for them to frame minimal viable security is to be able to benchmark against their peers and to stay ahead of their peers when it comes to running away from the so-called hungry bears, pandas, spiders, or whatever we call the threat actors these days. But understanding the benchmark and how you compare is a good way to frame your bets.
Sure. Makes sense. Martin, we talk a lot about the cost of inaction versus cost of protection. As in DBIR, the report, it says nearly 43% of cyber attacks target SMBs. So what happens when SMBs underinvest or choose poorly? How do you explain to a business leader, and it doesn't have to be just SMB, even enterprise as well, where if you don't do this, the cost of fixing it, incidents would be higher because it's hard to quantify it. Yes, there are ways, Monte Carlo, there are ways to quantify risk, but for a simple conversation, what are your go-to 3 things or 5 things that you'll tell the CEO or the owner, and they'll be like, yeah, this totally makes sense?
I mean, I usually look at how much revenue they generate per year. So let's say, just to make it easy, right? Like $1 million a day. So 365 million bucks a year in revenue. So I actually had a very good, large publicly traded company in Orange County in the medical device manufacturing space. Not going to say the name, but we talked to them about security last year. They were reluctant to invest in the tools and, propose solutions that we recommended because ultimately they really just count every single dollar and try to maximize shareholder value. So at that expense, they ended up getting breached. I would say they spent about 2 to 3 months trying to recover from that breach. Most of their IT teams were working about 14 hours a day. The CISO, yes, he got fired. He's no longer there. And they were down. I think they were not able to ship devices for about 2 weeks. So, take that into account. Let's say at least 2 weeks of business impact, right?
That's $14 million. It's that simple.
$1
Yeah.
Plus the all the extra work, the hours spent on bringing the environment, losing key people. And I'm not saying that CISO was bad. I'm sure he probably wanted the best for his company. And most likely he encountered some resistance from the leaders of that company saying like, no, we do not want to spend the money on X, Y. So I think really, it boils down to educating security folks on how to express the risk to the enterprise. Most CISOs and most security professionals actually come from a technical background of they've been practitioners for a long time. They're not business people. No matter what people are saying out there, like if you put a CISO on a board and the board is pretty tough, most likely they're going to really destroy that CISO. So, I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? So I think like security folks really need to get up to speed on how to quantify that risk specifically to that business, not follow some cookie cutter model, but understand the business and be like, hey, we have manufacturing in all these countries. If these processes get disrupted, we're not going to get these devices shipped on time to our warehouse, which is not going to make it to the customer, which is not going to meet the deadline for an important contract.
Sure. So know your business. Yeah.
Really know your business in and out.
So I was just going to jump in there on like, I really love that point on CISOs are not known for being business people. I think that's a huge trend and a gap in like where that needs to go. That's also where enterprises can learn a lot from the SMBs where, it's not a CISO who's in charge of security for an SMB. It's someone with a broader business line responsibility or broader business responsibility. So how do we get CISOs to become more pragmatic and more business aligned? And also that's the skill gap that's missing in understanding like how security matters for those SMBs as well as the enterprises.
Yeah, the long-lasting debate of should security be IT function versus business function? We should do another session on that one for sure.
I'll just say one last thing really quick to that point. I'm on a charity board with the CEO of a very large, I would say insurance related business. They got about 6,000 employees, super nice guy. And I chat with him about security on and off. And I told him like, if your CISO will come to you and tell you like, hey, we got to spend $1 million to protect the business from something that could disrupt, I don't know, the business in the tune of like $50 or $100 million. Would you spend that $1 million? And the CEO is like, come on, dude, seriously, like $1 million for us it's like not even like, it's like 0.1% of our revenue. So the problem is that he feels that the IT leadership and security leadership are scared or don't know how to communicate that risk.
To ask for the money.
The ultimate executive officer in that company, they all think about risk reward. if you quantify those numbers, the decision is extremely easy. I just
Totally.
feel the massive gap between what gets the CEO and how it's being explained to the top IT leadership.
Right. So we can't have a podcast and not mention AI. I have been told that the AI driven tools, IT or cybersecurity, now will help, especially the SMB sector where a non IT or traditionally trained IT person, they can actually drive cybersecurity tools. How much truth to that statement is where a CEO or a founder or even a non IT person picks up a cybersecurity tool, but the use of AI and the LLM and asking the questions, they'll be able to manage and operate a cybersecurity tool. You can go first.
Yeah. That's a doozy. I think AI can help us generate more content, more information out there, but garbage in, garbage out, right? Like it depends if you can frame the question and build it out the right way. So that's actually part of why we're building Cybers. Like we are building Cybers to use AI to scale expertise. And in order to do that, it requires very careful selection of our experts and being able to like disseminate the information out there. I think that's where of a trusted cybersecurity advisor is vital to this, right? Like having the right people in your corner to help guide you and be able to say, yes, this passes a smell test, or hey, I know your business pretty well because you've shared this with me. I've listened to you. I hear you. Also watch out for this or consider this as well. So I think AI is a great tool for generating that content, but the curation and the community and the expertise behind it is really it needs to mature as the industry matures, which I think is happening, right? I think our industry is maturing to the point where we can help buyers navigate the cybersecurity journey in a far better way than we could.
And Martin, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity is massive on the SMB space. Like I would say exponentially more than on the enterprise space, just because, the fact that they don't have the people resources to help them. So I hope that AI sooner or later going to compensate for a lack of humans. Just use a tool that will actually know your environment, be able to respond to threats, and, just do the things a normal security practitioner will be able to do for the SMB space.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Martin, if you had one piece of advice for an SMB leader about to make their first cybersecurity investment, that they have no IT, no cybersecurity awareness, their friend's son or daughter who's good with IT had set up their fundamentals of IT and they're working fine, most of the SaaS products off the shelf, but now they're considering cybersecurity investment. What would that advice be, Martin?
Educate yourself. Really talk to someone like Ken, someone that understands that space really well, and get advice from someone that specializes in that space before you make any decisions, because every vendor is going to sell you on their solution, but you need someone that is agnostic, that actually understands the space to really provide that expert advice. So I would say find someone like Ken that will provide that expert advice before you buy anything.
Awesome. Ken, you want to add anything to that?
And likewise, I think, Martin, you're being too kind about it. I think it's the trusted advisors, right? So if I were to give a summary recommendation, it's you should go for minimal viable security. That is a combination of making your bets on how much you want to invest in security and also knowing the resources available to you, such as your ecosystem of trusted advisors, partners, and being able to have the conversations or just asking questions along the way. But it's really just, hey, we have lots to do, big lives to lead, and everything else going on in our businesses. So what's that minimal viable security answer that suits your business?
Totally makes sense. All right. Gentlemen, where can our listeners find and connect with you? Martin?
LinkedIn is definitely the best place to reach out to me.
Okay.
Always help the community and help anyone that needs help.
And we'll add your LinkedIn in the show notes as well. Ken, same for you, LinkedIn?
Yeah, likewise. Connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me or the company stuff. We're building Cybers to help buyers navigate the cybersecurity journey. And we believe cybersecurity doesn't have to be as complicated as it is out there today, along with providing the free tools to help companies find and understand their needs without extra sales noise or bias. Building it all in a platform to just remove that bias from the system as much as possible.
Sounds good. All right. Well, with that, thank you everyone who is listening today and who tuned in for SMB's conversation. SMB may be small in size, but they are big targets, and smart purchasing decisions can make all the difference. And thank you, Martin and Ken, for your insights on that topic.
Thank you, Ethan. Great time with you. Great seeing you, Ken. Bye.
That's a wrap on this Zero Trust journey. Now it's your turn. Step into the spotlight, share your story, and be part of the journey. Subscribe to Zero Trust Journey on LinkedIn for the latest news, events, and giveaways. Until next time.